Welcome back to our series, Unraveled, where we are breaking down all of these trendy new ways people are talking about our healing experience and our healing journey, right? So we're hearing words thrown around like shadow work, inner child work, secure attachments, attachment styles, love languages, calming your nervous system, and where all of these things are absolute necessities in order for us to really lean into our healing journey, in order for us to heal into being more whole. You know, you can't trust everything on the interwebs. And so as two practicing practitioners in healing work, we wanted to get in here and just be like, okay, so these are the phrases. This is actually what's happening in your body. These are some tangible things you can do to help just start to unravel some of those unhealthy coping mechanisms, some of untrue narratives about yourself. We're just trying to bring you the real. We're just trying to make it plain, make it real, so we can do the healing that we need to do, right? And we want to thank the Loveland Foundation for giving us an opportunity and a space to break this down for us by us. My name is Aseanté Renee, and my wonderful partner in healing is Miss LaToya Marie.
I'm LaToya Maria. I'm so excited to be with you, Aseanté, because we're getting into the good stuff. We show up as ourselves, whole as in authentic, honey. And we are deepening into how some of these struggles that we experience in our daily lives, that we attribute to mental health, how does it impact us as Black women specifically? Because our struggles are unique to us. And it can show up very differently than what may be documented, or how someone may be listing on these Instagram infographics. It may not even be something that we experience in that way. So that's something that I want us to name as well, because I want us to move out of that space of the bold prints and the infographics into where? Bold change, accessing ourselves in a real way, shifting how we move through this world so that we can be more whole, more tapped in, more and connected to our divine selves, and holding ourselves as sacred. And today we are exploring boundaries.
Okay. So before I'm gonna stay with me, because we're gonna jump right into this.
Let's get it.
Sister friend, how are your boundaries?
Okay. So my boundaries are fascinating. They're fascinating because I have strong boundaries with some folk and lax boundaries with others, namely my family. And I mean, y'all might know where I'm talking about and where I'm coming from. My boundaries are okay. They can be kind of strong, but I definitely know that with family, I struggle with keeping and upholding boundaries. That's for sure.
Okay. I want you to say a little bit more around why say a little bit more about your safety as it relates to your boundaries. Like why?
Yeah.
How do you feel about safety?
Safety. Okay. Feeling safe and in my body. Do you see how robotic I got? Feeling safe and in my body is something that brought me into this work. It is what helped me to start to reprogram and feel more comfortable, because growing up, I didn't really feel safe to be myself, to be my whole self, to be my true self. And so safety is something that is important to me. And there was a time in my life, especially in my 20s, where I was putting out boundaries that weren't really, I was trying to put them on others, if that makes sense, if that registers, when I really needed to be honoring what a boundary is for me. And it looked like some very interesting things, like posturing, like being angry, like it was very fascinating. But then when I would show up through my family, it would be this meek, because I felt unsafe, way of existing. And so the boundaries just went out of the window, the detriment of myself and my well-being.
I appreciate that you named that, because oftentimes we think of boundaries and we kind of play in extremes, right? I have very strong boundaries here, but I typically have very strong boundaries here because I have no boundaries here, right? And if I can't have any here, I'll double down over here in this part, right? Oftentimes people think that, or they may not know that they're doing this, but boundaries become a wall to keep people out. And that's not what they are. Boundaries are not a wall to necessarily keep people out. They're a way to facilitate vulnerability and healthy connections in relationships.
Yeah.
That's a complete pivot from I have to keep myself safe. Like they're actually, a boundary is a way to be like, hey, this is what love looks like for me. This is what healthy connection looks like for me. They're also only about our behavior, not other people's. And when we say like we can't control what other people do, we can only control what we allow and how we respond. And I get that that's easier said than done. So we're going to get into that a little bit later, right? But it truly is, like, sometimes the simplest statement is the right one. They really are only about our behavior and not other people's. And because boundaries are an act of self-love, they're an example of how we are choosing to love ourselves, to protect ourselves, right? Boundaries are actually proactive. And yes, I get it. Sometimes we create them as a reactive response because we may not know that we need to state a boundary until it's actually crossed. Or it's like, oh, I didn't know that was a boundary. Let me put that out there. And that's fine, right? But once stated, boundaries are not suggestions. They're statements.
Yeah.
They're not. And okay, so let's sit with that for a minute, right? They're not a suggestion, they're a statement. And people may say, well, isn't that a wall going up? No. A wall is, you're giving this image of like, no one can come in and I can't get out. More like a window. I can close this window right now.
Yeah.
This is a statement. This is what I will allow. This is what I won't. When the window's closed, I can still see you, but you don't have access to me.
Yeah. That
right? And so it's no surprise that sometimes, specifically us as Black and Brown women, we have a hard time setting boundaries and keeping boundaries in our lives, especially where we're still learning our own value. How can you set a parameter and a boundary where you don't know, when you don't know where your land is, right? How do I set a perimeter if I don't know what's mine? And so I want us to get into talking about, like, how do we actually create a boundary? And I asked you earlier around, like, talk to me about boundaries and safety, because one of the first questions you ask yourself when you're figuring out how to create a boundary, right? Because we throw that word around. You got to have better boundaries. You need to have better boundaries. And when most people say need to have better boundaries, they mean you need to have better boundaries with other people, not with them. Most people want you to be as healed as possible until it inconveniences them. Well, not most people, just some people. But when I want you to ask yourself this question. Okay. What do I need to feel safe? And when do I feel unsafe? So I want you to ask yourself that question and share what you feel comfortable sharing.
Thank you. So what do I need to feel safe?
And when do I feel unsafe?
Unsafe. Okay. In this moment, as it relates to boundaries and safety, what I need to feel safe is to be seen and heard, and absolutely to be supported. And by that meaning, when I speak or when I share what I need or how I need to be supported, it's heard and respected. And the respect can be, I can't really support you in that way. And the support can be, great, I got you. So that really makes me feel safe to be seen and heard and accepted. For myself also, by the way, because it makes me feel safe, because one of the things that I would struggle with is like, am I too much? Am I too much? So I feel unsafe when I am my full self and I become critical because of how others respond to me. That's in this moment, that's what's showing up very specifically and true. And it's ringing and screaming. And I think it's screaming to me because I'm about to move into a new space and have new responsibilities. And so these people won't know who I am. And then which version of myself am I going to allow to show up? And that's when the safety part starts to come online. And I'm like, ooh, okay. Do I get to be me?
I get To be me.
Mm.
I want to add to that question, or
Mhm.
that pair of questions. What do I need to feel comfortable? When do I feel uncomfortable?
Mm. What do I need to feel comfortable? I don't know that I know in this moment what I need to feel comfortable, because I think what I need to feel comfortable is to give myself compassion as
Mm.
I kind of navigate things in my life right now in this moment that are new, and I don't really know that I can master in this moment, because I like to be in control and I like to master things, honey. So
Mhm.
what I need to feel
Coping
comfortable.
mechanism for another day.
Okay. What I need to feel comfortable is to be compassionate with myself. And what makes me uncomfortable? That was the other question. What
When do
makes
you
me, oh, when do I feel uncomfortable? It's going to be the same thing. I feel uncomfortable when I notice within myself
Mhm.
that I feel like I have to be somebody else, or I need to accommodate something, accommodate external things. So what makes me feel uncomfortable is like, I need a moment to land with that, because something else came up, but it didn't really have anything to do with, uh,
But it does.
okay. So what makes me uncomfortable is injustice. It makes me really uncomfortable because it makes me angry and furious and makes rage come through me. And I am not in a space that I really like to activate a lot of that energy these days. That makes me uncomfortable.
So based on when you feel safe and when you don't feel safe, and what makes you feel comfortable and when you feel uncomfortable, what would you state is a boundary as you are moving in? Because you've shared before, like you're moving, you're about to start this new transition in your life. What would you state as a good boundary for you, a good protective boundary as you're going into this new season?
Ask questions when I need to,
Mhm.
get further clarification when I need to, and not try or resist the temptation to, I want to say be perfect, but that's not really the word. Um, Resist the temptation to appear like I have it all together, or like that, or that I know
Mhm.
everything, if that makes sense. I'm going into a new company, a new city, and I will say this. Most of my friends and family, they're like, oh, LaToya, you got this. You've done this. For those of you who don't know, I have lived in several countries. I've lived outside of the US for over 12 years, and I have no issues with moving and ebbing and flowing, but I'm in a totally new season in my life as a woman. And for the first time, Aseanté, I told you, I felt terrified to be moving and to be going into something new, which was foreign to me. I was like, what is this? So many people are like, oh, LaToya, you got this. You already know. You do this. This is sleeping for you. And what that does is starts to layer on this shield, this armor of like, yeah, I got this. Yeah, of course I got it. But actually, I'm
I also
present with how I'm feeling.
give
I'm going to be
permission.
giving myself permission to be uncomfortable, and not be down on myself or think that I should be feeling some way because of the familiarity that people know and that I know it to be from the past.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
definitely a boundary is to ask questions, get further clarification, and resist this need or the temptation to have it all together.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if I'm hearing you correctly, the boundary that you're setting up is I'm not going to allow others to dictate for me how this experience is going to go,
Mm-hmm.
because
Yes.
I'm going to give myself permission to ask questions.
Mm-hmm.
I am not going to, I'm going to hold firm that I get to be unsure.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have to have all of the answers. I don't have to have it all figured out. I don't have to be the superwoman. And I'm going to hold this boundary of humanity for myself.
Yeah. A boundary of humanity for myself. I needed that. Thank you. Yeah. that.
Of course. And so do you see how, and this is an exercise I often do, because, you know, we change the seasons that we're in, right? The earth is not the only thing that does 4 seasons. We are always evolving and becoming better versions of ourselves. And so I encourage people to ask themselves these 4 questions consistently when you're like, I feel like this, I don't know if I have a boundary here, or I'm starting to feel a bit overwhelmed in this space, or maybe I need to check into what my boundaries actually are. Right. Mm-hmm. When you decide what it is that you need and what helps you feel safe, give the language. I was like, well, if I need to be able to ask questions, I need to be able to do these things, then a boundary for me is making sure other people don't dictate what my experience will be. A boundary for me is being able to like hold my humanity. Mm-hmm. And so you're not going to make me feel bad when something is unclear or something is unsure, or I want to change my mind. Like, I get to be human here. Right. Yeah. So that's just one of a few exercises we can engage in when it comes to having boundaries. But
that
here's
good.
Go ahead.
That feels good. I feel good getting to talk that out and being able to establish a boundary with this really big transition and move that I'm about to embark on. So thank you. I even feel it like some softness here in this space, in the shoulders and in the chest. So yeah, I like it. Thank you.
Of course. Thank you for allowing me to walk through this process with you. So I'm going to ask you another question, though. Because we want to get into what's the block, right? Like, why don't people have good boundaries?
Okay.
So here's my question. Mm-hmm. When did you first learn about boundaries, and what did you learn?
Okay.
Or where did you first learn about boundaries? Where and who did you first learn about boundaries? Like, where did you learn about them? Who did you learn about them from? And what did you learn?
I learned about the lack thereof boundaries from my parents, specifically. Okay, not my father, but my mom, definitely. And I didn't really see them in any real way until I noticed it from my maternal grandmother, for sure. My maternal grandmother had phenomenal boundaries in hindsight. And it's a really interesting way of existing when you have a mother and a grandmother who are different and exhibit things very specific to them, because I literally came from them. So I moved through the world. Sometimes it felt like this split of, okay, no boundaries live here. Say, do whatever, like, and then, honey, boundaries are here.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to be firm, and how am I going to honor my well-being here? Mm-hmm. So I learned about them very young, and I started to exercise them for myself and experiment with them. And when I went to college and in my 20s, and that's kind of when I started to realize, like, oh, wait a minute. My maternal grandmother had phenomenal boundaries. I need to follow her guidance in this, right? Get curious about what that looked like, which led me to the extreme. However, we leveled out.
You're like all the boundaries all the time. Oftentimes thank you for sharing that. And I appreciate that you named, I got to see 2 different experiences and situations where boundaries are very strict and boundaries, what's a boundary? Mm-hmm. With many things in our lives, as we're learning to navigate it and figuring out and either unlearning or figuring out where the programming came from, it's always good to ask yourself, who told me that? Who showed me that? And people don't have to have a conversation with you for you to witness things, right? If you notice, oh, when this person does this, this is the response. I'm either going to do that or I'm not going to do that, because I either want the response that they got or I absolutely don't want the response that they got. Mm-hmm. And so boundaries is one of those places. It's in that category, right? Like, where did you first learn about boundaries? Who taught you about boundaries? Did you respect or fear the person that taught you about boundaries? Mm-hmm. What was it that?
Something though, that just came online for me, came into the memory. It's a memory with my paternal grandfather. I love my grandparents, y'all. Like, I'm obsessed with them. Anyway, So my paternal grandfather was picking me up from high school, and I was in my senior year. So I was 17, and I wasn't really boy crazy. That wasn't my thing. I mean, but I wasn't obsessed. My grandfather, we were talking about something, who knows? I was probably complaining about something that a boy said or did. And he said to me, LaToya, very relaxed in this, the Chrysler 300. He says to me, you are not your mother. You're not your grandmother. You're you. And you do not have to make every mistake. You don't have to do every single thing that you see others doing. You can observe them. You can learn your lessons, some of them, through witnessing what's happening with other people. And you can choose whether or not you want to take that on, or you can choose whether or not you want to take another route or use a different option. And and he was talking about this with respect to how I dealt with men or boys.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm saying this because it's a really interesting memory, because I took it to heart. When I say I took it to heart, I really took it to heart, because it's my grandfather, who was a man and an elder, telling me, you don't have to do any of those things that your mama did, that your grandma did. You don't have to do any of those things. You can be who you want to be as a woman, right? And I took it to heart. Mm-hmm. And in my mind and in my heart and in my being, it was, I'm not losing no sleep. I'm not stressing myself out. And at that moment, I think that I crafted a boundary, and I want to know what you think about that, what that memory that I just shared with you, because I'm in a different portion of my life now where my interest and my capacity is a little bit different with regards to this specific topic relating. Mm-hmm. And so I just wanted to know what your thoughts about that were, because it just came online. I'm like, oh.
So let me ask you a follow-up question then. And this is in your wheelhouse. Mm-hmm. Do you remember how your body responded when he said that?
Absolutely. It was pure excitement. It was actually, I felt free. I felt liberated. I felt like, what? I can do whatever I want to do. And it was chaos after that. I changed what school I wanted to go to. I decided from that moment forward that I was actually going to do what was best for me. And my grandfather has always been my biggest ally when I moved abroad, oh my goodness. Okay. Yeah. Wow. I'm having a moment. Okay.
Here's the thing about boundary. You actually beautifully moved us into like, what's the practice of creating a boundary, right? Because you had, and I asked specifically, do you remember what your body did? Because initially, I would assume, as you were explaining the story, there was a bit of a difficult emotion, right? Like, how do I reconcile this? How do I manage this? How do I I'm trying to make it make sense. And your father gave you permission to create your own boundary around that, right? And so oftentimes, in our bodies know what our boundaries are before our mind will.
Yes.
Our bodies tell us what's happening to us long before our mind will give the words to what the body boundary is. Shout out to Nitita Gazelle, the founder of the Trauma Conscious Yoga Institute and the author of Embodied Self-Awareness. There'll be a link for her in the bottom. She speaks to the 80-20 rule quite often, and we may have mentioned this before. 80% of what happens to us is in our body, 20% happens in our mind. We spend 80% of the time in our mind, 20% of the time in our body. And so the way that you start to identify the boundary through your body is you identify a difficult emotion. Resentment, anger, frustration, sadness, overwhelm, confusion. I'm not sure what to do with this here, right? And you honor that emotion as valid. I get to feel this. I get to feel whatever this is. It's okay to feel it. And then you identify the need around that feeling. And then you honor the need as valid. And then you believe you are worthy of having that need met. So in this conversation with your grandfather, if I'm hearing you correctly, you were struggling with something as it relates to engaging with boys. You were thinking about how other people deal with it. You honored, like, no, this is my experience here. You identified, I need to know how to move forward with this. you honored and respected and like, no, this is valid. Like, it's not a stupid thought, or, we like to dismiss, oh, that's just, it's a dumb thought. I know this is dumb, but I know this is silly, but no, you're like, no, this is something I really need to get more understanding around.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I get to know I get to know what I need here. And it was beautiful that you had someone in that experience and in that journey with you, and you had a beautiful imprint in that moment where you got to figure out what this boundary looked like for you.
Yeah.
But in identifying a difficult emotion, honoring that emotion is valid, identifying the need, honoring the need is valid, believing you are worthy of that need. If any of those ingredients are not present as you're processing through what a boundary needs to look like for you, you're going to be less likely to assert that boundary.
Indeed.
Because you're not going to believe you're worthy of it. Right? Boundaries are here to protect our needs. I can't protect something if I don't know what it is. I won't set a boundary protecting my need if I don't believe that the need is valid. And I won't be able to set a boundary based on my feelings if I don't honor the feelings as valid. And so it feels like all of that, and what a beautiful experience that your needs and your feelings, your emotions got to be validated by someone else. Because a lot of times they aren't validated by us or by others. So they still have to be validated by us. And so all those ingredients were in place to help you identify what your boundary needed to look like for yourself.
Yeah.
Tell me how that's landing for you.
I mean, I feel my heart feels very open, and this imprint, this memory it's something that now that I'm recalling it, I've come back to it often in my life when I've needed it so that I can instate a boundary. It was happening unconsciously or subconsciously, not so much at the fore, but I really feel certain that anytime that I need to place a boundary in any moment, I remember that conversation or how that experience impacted me. And that it's not specific to that topic we were covering, but anything that I needed, I felt validated in that moment. And to feel validated by a family member, which was something that I didn't always feel that I had, is something that I cling to and I hold on to. And it's such a great memory. So I feel really great in this moment. And as I'm moving forward through my own journey, I'm like reclaiming that memory. And I'm like, okay, here we go. I feel good about it.
Yes. It's that excitement, right? You're like, oh, this is a good boundary for me because I feel this feeling again. Our body remembers. And so
my body remembers. I feel like I have more space to breathe. I feel more comfortable or relaxed in my shoulders. And I feel like I have more clarity in my mind. That's one of the biggest things, because I have a tendency to cloud my mind with lots of thoughts. So overthinking, right? So now I feel like those things are kind of falling away and I have a lot more clarity in mind. And that's real good. We need clarity in mind.
I love that. Now I'm gonna put you on the spot a little bit, and I'm gonna ask you a question.
Okay.
Because the things that I named are what we're talking about, like setting body boundaries and most things happening in our body versus in our mind. And a lot of things that I named were questions that you are going to be asking yourself, things you're going to be reflecting on, things that are going to require cognitive thought. Right? Can you bring in some somatic body things as it relates to setting a body? We can't talk about our bodies being, the thing that really tells us what's happening, and then we don't have any somatic body exercises after we've spent all this time talking about cognitive things to help you figure out to siphon through where your boundaries are, where they aren't, where they need to be stronger, where you need to maybe shift them. Could you give some somatic?
Absolutely, I can. Count on me for us to explore some body boundary practices and understanding really what they look like. And embodiment is really being in your body. It's really being present with all of the feelings, the sensation, the experiences, and shifting out of the words, the names and the sayings and how does your body interpret it? So one of the things to take into consideration is always going to be when you're experiencing a somatic practice to expand capacity. I always invite in breath, a moment to calm and center, return to the self. And then I invite in a physical practice. So that's what we'll do. One of the things to name, because you said it, I don't know exactly how you stated it, but I can remember the energy and the essence of it, which is how can you invite in or honor these questions or these statements if you don't really feel like it's valid, or that you don't validate how you're feeling. These things to me lean into how I invite in a somatic practice to help build the space for me to feel worthy, validate my feelings, and be present with them. Because if I'm abandoning myself, self-abandoning through thoughts, but also self-abandoning the body, then we don't know. Because when your body responds, there's a physical response. And that is your signal, your cue, your clue that you need to bring in a boundary if you don't have one there. So let's look at it from that space. That's how I want us to look at it. How's that sound? Okay,
that's
great.
perfect.
Let's take shape in our seat. If you want to lay down, you can, but just take shape wherever you are in the foundation. And again, we want to come to the body, the physical body. So not our thoughts of the body, but the physical body. So bring your hands to your arms, do a nice little squeeze just to resensitize. Okay. Hands to the thighs, maybe glide the palms along the thighs. Squeeze a little bit. Notice the fabric on your skin. Take in the room, take in the space, because we're looking at a device. Just take in this physical space again. All right. Now, as we land in our seat, if you are sitting on a firm chair or on a sofa, that's fine. But just if you have a back, lean into the back of the chair or the surface. And then give yourself an opportunity to be present with how you are experiencing your body in this moment. Notice the back of your body. If your feet are firmly on the earth, great. If your feet are covered with shoes or socks, that's fine. Just squeeze your toes, notice them. And then feel the soles of your feet connected to the floor, the earth. And then draw your attention up towards your sits bones. So where your body is making contact with the seat. And then notice your sternum. And allow that noticing of the sternum, which is in the front part of the body, to move through in between the shoulder blades at the back of the body. Notice the spinal column and breathe into that with awareness. And then notice your shoulders. And with that, you just bring the right shoulder up towards the right ear. And then draw it back and down. Maybe you breathe with that and draw the left shoulder up towards the left ear. And perhaps you draw it back and down. Bring your awareness to your throat. Maybe you swallow. Notice your face here. Notice the jaw. Maybe you release your mouth and disengage the jaw a little bit. Soften out in your eyes. So notice your eyelids. And then notice your temples as well. Notice if they feel tight, if there's tension there. And then draw a line there and through to the midbrain, so the space between your brow. And then notice the crown of your head. Okay. From here, we're going to take an inhale and allow ourselves to tighten and squeeze our body. So we'll make fists and tighten up through the body as we breathe in. Clench your body, tighten your face, squeeze as you breathe in. And exhale, release. Now take your palm and place it on the belly, the low belly. Relax your low belly here. And we're going to do breath of fire. So breath of fire is just a focus on the exhalation. And it's a recoiling of the belly, just a natural recoiling. So the exhale is what we focus on. The inhale is natural. So slowly breathe in and then breathe out. And then start to notice this pumping of the stomach. So you take a forceful exhale, you go through the nose. Like you want to breathe out or blow out a candle with your nose. You're drawing the navel in towards the spine. Keep going with that. A natural inhale and a forceful exhale. Forceful as in intention. Now take a deep breath in and breathe out. And slowly open your eyes before we move into the next portion of this practice. So we're focusing the breath between the sternum and the low belly. And here in this space, we have the solar plexus or the Manipura chakra, and we have the sacral chakra. And the Manipura or solar plexus chakra focuses on willpower, right? Your ability to access your capacity to advocate for yourself, right? And then the sacral chakra is the space where you activate or call in creativity, but mainly self-expression. So sometimes when we have a boundary that's being violated or a space that needs a boundary, we may feel some tightness or some restriction in our belly. So this reclamation of the belly space, right? Like, oh, something that made me feel uncomfortable. What's this? An opportunity to breathe into this space. When you invite this practice in regularly, you have access to know, okay, my body is telling me something here. It's telling me that I need to invite in a way to support myself. I need to advocate for myself. So it's one of my favorite breath works because it is activating, it's firm, it's affirming, and I want to know how it made you feel.
It slowed me down.
Mm-hmm.
It slowed me down a bit. And it kind of helped me to get in tune with where I was feeling. Like my shoulders are a little tight. My leg is like a little restless, but I wasn't paying attention to that before. But I do have a question. If someone can't go through that entire practice to, like, if they're in a moment and they're realizing a boundary is violated, how do you still check into your body when you're
Orienting to the self? So I think for me, one of the practices, and there are so many ways to honor this, is to orient to your body. So how we began was we were oriented to certain aspects of our body so that we can re-inhabit. So the soles of the feet, right? The pelvis, the sternum, orienting to your throat. Does my throat feel constricted here? Does my chest feel tight here? Do I feel like I'm not grounded here? Are my shoulders tight? So orient to your body. I need to name this. We can be the observer of what's happening outside of ourselves, what other people are doing, and we can also regulate ourselves. That's something we can do simultaneously, y'all.
Say that part again.
We can be the observer of what's happening outside of us in the world, and simultaneously regulate within ourselves. We actually should be doing that so that we can be responsive to what's happening. We can pause. We don't have, if something is happening or someone is saying something to you that makes you uncomfortable, it's real cute online to be like, snap back, like have something to say straight away. I love it. I can be quick with it, but you can also regulate yourself and recall and reclaim your power by pausing and taking a moment. Who says you can't? Most of the things that we are naming as urgency is not. Listen, I worked in an industry where real emergencies were happening. So, Jim Bob or whomever is sending me an email telling me this is urgent.
It's not. It's not.
It's not, y'all.
And that's actually also setting a boundary, right? Like I'm going to set a boundary around how I engage negativity, how I engage other people's trauma or triggers that are not mine. And so it's like I can clap in with it, or I can be like, you know what? That wasn't for me.
Lean
Return
back
to
into yourself.
Yeah. I realized I just did that, even as
You
I was
see,
saying that.
like, let me settle back into myself, right? This to me is a beautiful reframe of a lot of the stereotypes that are moving in and out of these spaces when it comes to how Black women show up. Black women showing up, and again, I'm going to continue to name this, falling deeper into ourselves, reclaiming ourselves as sacred and being in our home, our bodies, is a beautiful boundary to take on. So for me, when I explore this simultaneous action of being the observer and the regulator of self, it is, if you were in a practice, right, a somatic practice, and learning to say no, right? Or you're working with a body boundary, one of the practices is like saying no and like putting your hand out in front of you. You can have an energetic me, not me. That's a boundary. Me, not me. And this is a physical representation of it, but you can have an energetic representation of it by taking a step back, by taking a breath, an inhale and an exhale. That in and of itself is an opportunity for you to breathe in, breathe out, take a step, check in and orient. Okay, this is what's happening in my body. Now let me name what my boundary needs to be for myself, for my well-being, so that it can be respected and responded to. One thing to name and to take into consideration when you're in these moments is that this is a practice. So I'm sharing these things with you, and try them out. The first time it may feel like, oh, that felt cringe. That didn't feel right. But keep trying and keep practicing it. It'll become something that is familiar to you. We will continuously say this. It's not one and done. You don't eat a good meal and then we're healthy for life. This is a practice.
Not at all.
It's a practice, y'all.
Yeah, it is a journey, and it will change. You'll get the practice down, and you'll be like, oh, and now in this new season, I needed to look like this and look differently. One thing I want to clarify and make very clear: we are not saying when someone violates your boundary that you just silently be like, no, not me. No, if you need to speak to someone violating your boundary.
Oh yeah.
Do what you need to do.
Oh yeah, definitely do what you need to do.
And what we're also like inviting and giving you permission to and have the power around is to say, is this even worth? Remember, boundaries are about your behavior, not how other people respond, right? It's like, is this worth my mental, emotional energy? Is this worth my mental, emotional capital? Is this worth my time? Because my time is precious.
Yeah.
And if it is, let them know.
Let them know.
And
because the way that we've been showing up in the world has been, we're on the front lines of everything. Just needed to pause there. Okay. And so my invitation, which is for you to take up space in your body, reclaim agency, and let your body be your best friend, and it will tell you how to respond and when. So that's why, for me, that beautiful simultaneous action of being the observer and the regulator of self, that can happen. It can happen in tandem. And it's such a beautiful practice, because what ends up happening is you can validate how you're feeling, and you can be quick with it when you need to. You can respond verbally or say whatever you need to if something is being violated, but you can also be like, yeah, no. Yeah, no, right? I want us to experience ease in a way that sustains us. I'm interested in us having more access to our well-being and vitality in a way that isn't, okay, I'm burned out, I'm tired because I've been doing all of these things and I've been showing up and advocating, I've been doing all of this. What does this look like to advocate and show up for myself? Mm-hmm. And for me, that is a boundary.
I love that. Whew.
Yeah.
Okay. And all these things with the boundaries start with, you are worthy to have them. Your feelings are valid. What you need is valid. Your emotions are valid. We're not letting people gaslight us into thinking otherwise. If no one else tells you today, we told you, we said it. We let us be the ones who are like, yep, you're right. That's okay.
Yeah.
You can start to believe it for yourself. It's okay. How you feel, what you're experiencing, your needs, those are valid. That's where we start to figure out what our boundaries are. But we can't even get there if we don't believe that about ourselves. And so the first part is just starting, our hope is that that's where you start. And if right now the work is just, let me just start there and start figuring that out and doing some of this breath work so I can start figuring that out. Cool, sis. Cool.
Yeah, that's fine.
That's the seat that you're in. Let's go. Let's get it. That's the foundation. That you can't build a house without the bricks. Just getting the bricks right now.
Mm-hmm.
So we don't want anyone to feel any kind of shame or guilt or overwhelm around the things that we're talking about today. They're all pieces to the journey to help you, to help us get back to us. Thank you so much for joining us today. If you found any part of this helpful, please like it, please share it. If you know someone, share it with your friends, share it with your family, share it with the people you can't stand, maybe because they don't have good boundaries. Maybe this would be helpful for them and then y'all can reconcile. You never know. You may be bringing people together just by sharing this video. But if it resonated in some way, please, by all means, share it.
Please subscribe to the Loveland Foundation, where we provide accessible mental health resources for everyone on their journey. Tap the notification button and stay updated with all of the things we've got going on. We have the next 2 sessions coming up. They're going to be good, y'all. We're getting into some good stuff. Should we tell them what we're getting into?
I think you should tell them next week. I think you should tell them next week.
We'll tell y'all next week so that you can see. You're going to love it. Show up for us.
No, tell them now. Tell them now what next.
Oh, okay. So next week, we're getting into shame. Shame, y'all.
And not what y'all think it is.
And it's going to be good. It's going to be good. It's going to be good. I'm heading that one. Aseanté, tell us which one you're taking on.
Perfection. For all my recovering perfectionists out there, I see you.
She got me right. Oh my goodness. Okay.
But yeah, please tune in. We just out here unlearning what does not serve us, releasing what does not serve us, unconditioning ourselves so we are no longer unalived.
Yeah. And remembering our wholeness, remembering our divinity, remembering that we can be human, and remembering that we are absolutely worthy. This session, there will possibly be some bonus support there. There's a chi bath that you may see. There's also an article on my site, Rooted and Crowned, about boundaries, and a free ebook to support you. So that'll be linked. We got all the good things. Don't worry. We got some things that to support you as you carry on in your journey of wholeness and well-being. We'll see you soon. Thank y'all.
See you soon. Bye.